To start this video, let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortably familiar. When was the last time you sat down and tried to remember what happened in, say, 2022? Not a major event, not a birthday or a trip, just a regular Tuesday, a week, a month. What did you do? Who did you see? What did you feel? Most people draw a near complete blank, and not just for 2022, for entire stretches of the last 5 years, maybe longer. You know that feeling when you look up and suddenly it's December, and you genuinely cannot account for where March through November went? Or when someone mentions something that happened a couple of years ago, and you realize they mean 2019, which your brain still registers as recent, almost present, like it was maybe 18 months back at most? That's not aging. That's not distraction. That's not you failing to be present enough. Something structural happened to the way your brain processes time, and it started well before 2020, though 2020 accelerated it into something most people have never experienced before in their lives. Here's what's strange about this. You're not alone, and you're not imagining it. This is one of the most widely reported psychological phenomena of the post-pandemic era. Researchers across neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and behavioral science have been documenting it in real time. The experience has a name, a mechanism, and, once you understand it, a remedy. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why time feels like it disappeared, why certain years feel compressed into a single gray blur, why 2019 feels closer than 2023, and what your brain actually needs to start recording time properly again. Because the answer changes not just how you understand the past few years, it changes how you live from here forward. Your brain doesn't have a clock, not a real one. No internal metronome ticking away seconds and minutes and months, stamping each moment with a timestamp before filing it away. What your brain has instead is something far more interesting and far more vulnerable to disruption. Your brain measures time through memory density. Here's how it works. When you experience something new, a new place, a new person, a new challenge, a new emotion, your brain encodes that experience with detail. It pays attention. It creates what neuroscientists call a rich episodic memory, a memory with texture, context, emotional coloring, sensory detail, the kind you can actually return to. When you later look back on a period of time, your brain doesn't count days. It counts memories. It feels how many distinct, rich, differentiated experiences are stored from that period. If there are many, if the period is dense with new inputs, it feels long, full, like a lot happened. If there are few, if the period was repetitive, low novelty, blurred by routine, it feels short, compressed, gone. This is the mechanism behind what neuroscientist David Eagleman has studied extensively. The perception of time is directly tied to the volume of new memories the brain registers. Not clock time, memory time. Think about your childhood summers. Objectively, they were 8 weeks, but in memory, they feel enormous, almost endless, because everything was new. Every experience was being encoded in detail. Your brain was flooded with novel inputs, new friends, new games, new fears, new discoveries. The memory density was extraordinarily high. Now think about last February, 3 weeks ago, effectively, in brain time, even if the calendar says it was 14 months back. This is the core mechanism, and once you understand it, the last 5 years start to make a very specific kind of sense. Here's something most people miss when they talk about time perception and the pandemic. 2020 didn't create this problem. It detonated something that had already been building for 2 decades. The shift started quietly, somewhere in the early 2000s, with the mainstreaming of the internet, and then the explosion of smartphones and social media. And what it introduced into daily life was something the human brain had never encountered at this scale before: infinite, frictionless, always available stimulation. On the surface, that sounds like more novelty, more new things, more experiences. Shouldn't that mean richer memories and better time perception? The opposite happened. Here's why. The kind of stimulation that encodes as rich episodic memory, the kind your brain actually counts when it measures time, requires engagement, presence, and mild challenge. It requires you to be in contact with reality, with physical space, with other people's bodies and faces, with uncertainty, with outcomes you actually care about. Scrolling doesn't do this. Scrolling is novelty without engagement. Your brain is processing a continuous stream of new inputs, but none of them are landing. None of them are being encoded with depth. They're like pebbles skipping across the surface of water, fast, constant, and leaving no trace. What social media and constant digital stimulation actually did was train the brain into a state of high-frequency, low-depth processing. Lots of inputs, no deposits, the cognitive equivalent of eating constantly without absorbing any nutrition. Researchers studying memory encoding in the digital age noticed something alarming. People's ability to form distinct, retrievable episodic memories was declining in direct correlation with increased screen time. Not because the brain was damaged, because it was never given the conditions it needs to record properly. And then 2020 arrived and poured gasoline on everything. March 2020. Lockdowns begin across the world. And overnight, the physical architecture of daily life, the scaffolding your brain was using to mark the passage of time, collapsed. Think about what that scaffolding actually consisted of. Commutes. The sensory experience of being in traffic, on a train, in a different building. Meetings in physical rooms with other bodies. Restaurants. The smell of a place you'd never been before. Spontaneous conversations. Travel. The particular quality of light in a city you visited. The physical sensation of being somewhere other than your home. All of this sounds incidental, but it wasn't. For your brain's timekeeping system, these were the episodic anchors, the distinct, differentiated experiences that got encoded as real memories. Memories your brain could later use to feel that time had passed, that life had happened, that the weeks were distinguishable from each other. Lockdown removed almost all of it simultaneously. What replaced it was the most repetitively uniform environment the human brain has experienced in modern history. Same walls, same light, same screen, same routine, same stimuli, day after day after day. Your brain, remember, compacts similar experiences. When 2 days are essentially identical in their sensory and cognitive inputs, the brain doesn't store them as 2 separate memories. It stores them as a single compressed entry, like zipping files on a computer to save space. Psychologists studying this phenomenon published findings in journals including Nature Human Behavior, documenting exactly this. Isolation and the removal of physical landmarks, commutes, travel, social events fundamentally disrupted people's ability to organize time. Weeks became indistinguishable, months collapsed into each other, and then years. Many people describe the 2020-2023 period as feeling in memory, like a single continuous gray block. Not because nothing happened, but because everything that happened in the same place, in the same rhythm, surrounded by the same walls. The brain had almost nothing distinct to encode. And here's the part that's genuinely disorienting. That period is now the recent past. It sits in your memory as a thin file, almost empty, right next to 2019, which was full, distinct, anchored in physical reality. So 2019 feels recent, not because it was, but because its memory is richer than the 4 years that followed. If you thought time perception would snap back to normal once the lockdowns ended, you've probably noticed by now that it didn't. Not fully. For many people, the blur is still ongoing, even with full mobility, full social lives, full freedom of movement restored. There are a few reasons for this. The first is that the habits formed during lockdown didn't disappear when the restrictions did. Working from home became permanent for millions of people. Social lives moved substantially online and stayed there. The reliance on screens for entertainment, for connection, for stimulation intensified during the pandemic and largely remained elevated afterward. The cognitive patterns, high frequency, low depth, low physical engagement, persisted. The second reason is neurological. Extended periods of low novelty, high routine living actually change how the brain defaults to processing experience. When the brain spends long enough in low engagement mode, its threshold for what registers as notable, what gets encoded as a real memory, rises. Ordinary experiences that might previously have been encoded with some detail start sliding past without registering at all. This is sometimes described as a kind of perceptual numbing. The bar for what counts as a real experience gets higher. More and more of life happens below that bar, unrecorded, unremembered, and the gap in memory where those experiences should be reads retrospectively as disappeared time. The third reason is subtler and more personal. The pandemic years were, for many people, also years of grief, anxiety, and chronic low-grade stress. And chronic stress has a specific effect on the hippocampus, the brain region most responsible for encoding episodic memory. Elevated cortisol levels over extended periods impair the hippocampus's ability to form detailed memories. This means that even the experiences people did have during those years were being encoded under compromised conditions. Less detail, less texture, thinner files. So the time didn't just feel compressed while it was happening, it was being inadequately recorded. And now, looking back, the record is sparse, which the brain reads as barely any time passed at all. Here's where this goes beyond psychology and becomes something more personal. Your sense of having lived your life, your felt sense that you've been present, that time has been real, that you've actually inhabited the years of your existence, is built almost entirely from memory. Not from the fact that time passed, but from your ability to remember that it did. This is why people who emerge from long periods of depression or illness or repetitive Groundhog Day existence often describe a specific kind of grief, not grief for something that was taken from them. Grief for time they were present for, but somehow weren't there for. Time that happened and left almost no mark. That grief is real, and if you're feeling some version of it right now, this low hum of, where did those years go? That's not a dramatic overreaction. It's an accurate reading of what happened. Years of your life were recorded in low resolution. The files are thin, and the brain, when it tries to retrieve them, finds almost nothing there. What's important to understand is that this isn't permanent damage. The mechanism isn't broken. The conditions that allowed it to happen are what need to change. Your brain is still fully capable of encoding rich, dense, time-creating memories. The hippocampus is still plastic. The episodic memory system is still functional. What it needs are the inputs it's designed to work with. Novelty, physical engagement, real uncertainty, genuine presence, experiences that are differentiated enough from each other to be stored as distinct files. The question is, what does it take to start living in high resolution again? Before I give you the final key to start recording time again, we need to address why you are experiencing these symptoms in the first place. You are not losing your mind. You are simply going through a frequency transition. Because so many of you are feeling this friction, I created a blueprint, the ultimate quantum transition guide. It is the exact map you need to stabilize your energy and navigate this shift without the overwhelming chaos. If you are tired of fighting the old reality and are ready to anchor the new one, the portal is in the description. Now let's get back to how to start recording time again. This is not a list of productivity hacks. What follows is based on what we actually know about how episodic memory forms and what conditions reliably produce the density of experience that makes time feel real. The single most powerful thing you can do is introduce genuine novelty into your physical life. Not digital novelty, physical novelty. New routes, new places, new physical sensations, new social contexts with real bodies in real rooms. The brain's timekeeping system is anchored in the body. It needs physical markers, sensory anchors that are distinct enough from each other to create separate memory files. This is why travel, even modest local travel, has such a profound effect on perceived time. A weekend in a city you've never visited creates more distinct episodic memories than 3 months of familiar routine. Your brain is flooded with new inputs, new architecture, new smells, new social dynamics, new food, new sounds. The memory density spikes.